Hey everyone, this week we wrapped up our summer series called A Shared Gospel, looking at a guy named Titus. Just a couple things, kind of highlights from the sermon. Titus was someone that Paul relied on for comfort and encouragement. He also relied on him for much of the ministry work that he was doing. And so kind of the big idea was that we need to learn to rely on one another if we're going to accomplish the work that God has given us to do. When we're forced to rely on others, we're reminded of our limits. We're reminded essentially that we're human. And so I just kind of walked through just some obvious ways in which we are limited, and we need to remember those limitations. We have limited ability. We have limited knowledge. We have limited capacity, we have limited passion, and we have limited influence. And so what that means is that we're going to have a farther reaching effect when we can learn to rely on one another to do the work God has given us to do. The kingdom of God is not built by spiritual superheroes. It's built by God's people when we learn to rely on Him and one another. And hopefully this whole series really has been about learning to rely on others. Even someone like the Apostle Paul had to rely on other people to do the work. And so, again, I think there's just a really good lesson in that for us. And again, I hope y'all have enjoyed the series. Here are some questions this week for your small groups. Obviously, the first two, what was most interesting or encouraging to you this week? Number two, what was most challenging or raised some further questions for you? Number three, speaking of relying on others, how do you feel when you have to you're forced to rely on others? Is relying on others something that's easy for you to do, or is it something that's really hard for you to do? And you can kind of talk about why that is. Question 4, so outside of your immediate family, is there anyone that you would say you rely on quite a bit? And then also, does anyone outside of your immediate family tend to rely on you in some ways? Question 5, in what ways is relying on others a really good thing? And then in what ways does or can relying on others become a bad thing? So in other words, while we clearly need to learn to rely on others, that's like what this whole message was about, are there problems with relying on others too much? And what might the problems be? And then finally, one final question, if you get to it, just for discussion. Who is your favorite character or characters to sort of study and learn about this summer during our summer series? We looked at, I think, 9 or 10 different characters that helped Paul do the work of ministry. And I'm always curious, what was your favorite, or what characters sort of maybe you particularly connected with or learned something from? So take some time and chat about that if you get a chance. Hope you guys have a really great week. Starting a new series next Sunday, walking through the book of Revelation, something we've never done. And so it'll be a great series this fall, and we hope to see you guys next week.